So I've got a very simple cube in front of me today. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this cube wooden. We're going to give it a wooden texture. Now there's a lot of different ways to do this if you're doing an animation. You can hand paint it in Blender. There's all sorts of stuff. But it seems to me, and of course my knowledge of Unity is much less than it is in a Blender, but Unity wants you to have a JPEG that is wrapped around an object as a what they call UV texture. Okay, so you can go online and you can find a wood texture very simply, and I've done that. Let's just take a look at that texture really quickly here. So I'll minimize this. I've got a couple actually. See, view, how do you do? So I've got a few that you can see here. That's a decent one. That's kind of nice. Guys, listen up. Yes, I was going to say something about that. Sometimes you have to, and sometimes you don't. And a lot of it depends on what you're doing. If you take a look at this, what Mr. Brewer is saying is if you take a look at this texture here, okay, if you then put another version of this to the right and another version to the bottom and so on and so forth, this is not a tileable texture, okay? Now, this image, though, is very high resolution. It's over 3,000 pixels. So that may not be an issue depending upon how you do it. So what I'm going to show you today, actually, it won't be an issue. But we'll go over when it does become an issue and why it might become an issue. And it would be something like the tower that we were looking at yesterday. Okay, you have a brick texture. You would want that brick texture to be tileable, to be repeatable up and down and side to side so that you can just take it and wrap it around an object. Okay? That's different than what I'm going to show you today. Okay, so we'll get there little by little. But again, everybody's object is a little different, and so I'm going to try and teach you the best that I can. So we're just going to take this cube for simple stuff today. We're just going to take this cube, and we're going to put this wood grain texture. So this is oak wood texture, and if you look at it, very high resolution, 3,600 pixels by 24. In fact, that's so high resolution, and again, my knowledge of Unity is that we might even need to res that down in Photoshop so that Unity doesn't choke on it. I don't know. I don't know. We'd have to play with that. But anyway, so let's go take this cube. Now, what you're basically doing, and here it comes the very complex part of this. When you are texturing a three-dimensional object, the complexity in here comes to the fact that you're taking a mesh that is in 3 dimensions, and you are literally wrapping. It's like wrapping a present for Christmas, right? You cut the paper out, but then when you start to wrap it around, you get all these extra pieces, okay? So the trick in texturing and you doing UV unwrapping is you have to deal with all these extra pieces. And there's some very specific ways in doing that that make life a lot easier if you follow the directions and you kind of understand what's happening. So if I just go here and I'm going to take this cube and I'm going to go. There's a window up here that just says UV editing. We're going to go to that in just a second. But first, I need to put a basic texture on this thing. So I'm going to go over here to this materials button here, and I'm going to click on that. And you should have a basic material right here that is just the default. You can add a new one or whatever, and it's good to kind of give to add a new one so that you keep that default separate. So you can just add material 1, and then we can call it wood texture. And the nice thing about that is if you do this right and you name your textures as you're going through here, you can have multiple objects that have the same texture. And all you have to do then is just select it from the drop-down menu, and you don't have to do the work all over again. So that can be rather nice, okay? So I'll just name it wood texture. And then I'm just basically going to ignore a lot of this for now. We're just going to ignore all the other things here, and we're going to go over to the next tab button here, which is the texturing button. And here you can see I've got a texture. And right here it says type. And this is where it kind of comes in. So I'm going to say texture type, and I'm going to say image or movie. There we go. And the preview is black because it's not doing anything right now. And then we have the image button here. And I'm going to hit new. Or actually, no, I'm going to hit open. Sorry. I'm going to hit open. And then I got to get to my desktop here, texturing, and I'm going to find that JPEG that I want, and I'm going to hit open image. So now, what's going to look, let's just hit material here. You can see in the cube, something interesting is happening. You can see how it's stretching the texture down the sides. And I can go over here and I can hit texture, and no, nothing is happening. Okay? So what we want to do is this is the way it would look. See, and you can see how it's stretching vertically. And that's because we haven't unwrapped it. So essentially what it's doing is it's like a projector. It's taking that JPEG, it's projecting it on that top surface, and then the edges are basically just being stretched down along the side. What we need to do is we need to tell the computer to unwrap this object, kind of like taking a cardboard box and breaking it down for the recycling truck, right? How you break it down and you flatten it out. That's essentially what we have to do because we're flattening, we're taking a two-dimensional image and trying to put it on a three-dimensional object. We need to tell the computer how to do that. So what we have to do is a UV unwrap. So watch what I'm going to do here. We're going to go into the UV editing mode and we get this. Now the only way this is going to work is if you tab in to edit mode and you have everything selected. And then what I can do is I need to take my mesh and I'm going to unwrap it. So we're just going to go UV unwrap, unwrap, boom. And now you can see what's ended up happening is you just have a rectangle here. We're going to choose that image. Okay, and there's the image. We scroll back. And then if we go to textured here, we can see how that it is on all sides. Now, if you notice really carefully, though, here's what the interesting part. Just by doing it that way, the bad thing that's now happened is all four sides or all six sides of this cube are identical. So you can see how this texture here is the full JPEG. Same thing with this texture here. And if I were to grab and just select these 4 points at the top, and then hit the G key to grab them and move them, what you should see is all of a sudden things are going to start going really strange. And the reason for that is because basically what I've done, I didn't prepare the object correctly. And so what's happening is it's just projecting that image on all six sides. Boom, 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 same image. We don't want that. What we want is we want an image that is wrapped around the object in an appropriate manner. And so there's a new tool that we have to use to do this, and it's called seam. Not a crease, a seam. And I get the two mixed up in my brain sometimes. They're called seams. So here's what we do. We're going to take a look at our object. I'm going to undo this. So I'm going to reset my mesh. I'm going to go UV unwrap, reset. And then actually I'm going to, well, we'll just leave it like that. And what I want to do is think about how you could make a box. You know how you make a box? It's going to look like a cross if you do it right, okay? I need to set those edges so that this thing unwraps properly. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to take my edge select mode, and I'm going to, with the use of the shift key here, go along all the edges that I want to keep. Whoops, actually not that one. And I'm going to go to mesh. I'm going to go to edges, and I'm going to say mark seam. And that's going to mark a seam, and basically what that is it's a cut for my for the object. And I can see that seam when I spin around it. You know, I really hate this view. Let's just go to default view for now. So I can do this in default view. And I'm also going to take off the texturing here so that it's not confusing me. So I've got a seam that goes here. And I also need seam that goes here, like this for this arm. So I'm going to say mesh, edges, oops, edges, mark scene. I'm going to go over here, do that, and it should, if I did this right. So now when I hit and go back into UV editing, okay, I'm going to hit select A, like that, all select. When I go to UV unwrap, we see our cross. I did it right. Woo! So now you see all 6 sides of the image. Do you see that? So now all 6 sides of the image have been literally cut. So it's basically like taking a box, like this one right here, okay? And I took scissors, essentially, in quotes, in the computer, and to the computer, I cut down the sides here, and I flattened it out. And so now what I can do is I can control exactly what vertex or what face goes where on the texture. Now, this is really easy when it comes to something like this. It gets a little bit more complicated when they're round. We'll deal with that in a second. So you can see here, I've got this. This is nice. And if I go over here and I say textured, notice that it's see-through. This is a common problem. I need to try and flip the normals. So normals are the surfaces. So I'll just flip them. No, that didn't work. Recalculate. Still didn't work. Something's wrong. Why isn't it showing up? All right, we're going to try resetting. Now unwrapping again. Looks right. I think I killed myself by doing it wrong the first time. I love that. Oh, well, we go. Nope. Yeah, now let's try to flip it. Still not working. Don't you love it when these things happen? Yeah, that's what it looks like, and so flipping the normals should do this. See, okay, now, guys, let me turn this into a teachable moment, though. Okay, so I'm obviously having difficulties here, but remember we talked about the whole paper thin thing and how you can only put them on the one side of the object? This is what I meant. So if you have something that's paper thin, you may see a texture on one side, but when you go to the next side, it's see-through, just like these others. So what I should be able to do here is I should be able to flip the normals, which means it's flipping. Now it's working there. I don't understand what's going on. Well, maybe I just flip each one separately. That didn't work. So you can select each one and you can flip them. I think I really did kind of kill myself when I did it wrong. I think it really killed it. Well, okay, now that's a good point. So right now, notice I'm selected one face. As you select the face, it goes around. That's why you have to hit A for all to select them all. It's not working. So here, let's do this. You get the idea, though. We're going to move to a new object because I think I shot myself in the foot trying to do it wrong the first time, and that kind of killed me. So we're going to go back to our default. I'm going to delete this object because it's being a pain in the butt. Tab out, X. Okay. Now I'm going to add a sphere to kind of show you how this has to work. So we have a similar issue with the sphere. If we wanted to make this a wooden sphere, okay, if it projects it without unwrapping it, you're going to see weird things happening to the way the textures are wrapped around the object. It's going to basically go straight through it. So what we have to do, we have to literally unwrap this sphere. So what it's going to end up looking like is it's a lot like a map. You ever seen a map that's actually been cut and opened flat of the whole globe, how it's curved at the top and the bottom. That's essentially what has to happen here. So now think about this. Your character, a character you have, or a round object, there has to be a seam down the back side of it. So you have to be very strategic about where you put those seams. So if you're doing like a character with arms, you need to put the seams down the inside of the arm, and then you can match up your textures, okay, so that you don't see it, or if you do see it, it's very minute, so it's not that big of a deal. So what we'll do is let's go into edit. We're going to edit this. So I'm going to tab into edit mode. I've got my vertices. I don't need to split it into two seams. I really only need one. So Alt, and you'll notice that it kind of does this for you already, see? So if I click Alt and right-click down, it puts it right down the middle. So I'm going to then go to my mesh, edges, and I'm going to say mark seam. So now it's got a seam right down the back side there. So I'm going to tab out. Let's put a new material on it. Okay, material 1. Go to our texture, add a new texture. Now we're going to add our image, which, because this is the same file as the other one, will be in, it'll still be in the memory, so I can just select it here. So there it is there. Now I'm going to go to UV editing, and right now it's not doing anything. Okay? But if I tab into edit mode, select A, and unwrap it, you can see it right here now has unwrapped that sphere and flattened it out on the texture. And so what we should be able to see now, okay, is the texture. Now, obviously, that's not perfect. That's not the way we probably want it to look. So we would have to play with it. And you have to alter, when you're doing this, you have to alter your image based upon how the file is going to be falling on the object, or the JPEG is going to be falling on the object. Let me boost up my, if I can take my lighting here. Doesn't factor that into this quickly. Ambient, let's see if this raises that. No, it still doesn't do it. So anyway, you can see how it's not going to work very well for this sphere. What this means, guys, is the unwrap has to be done in a different manner for round objects than it does for flat objects. And if you wanted to do a Google search, there's some funny looking stuff out there you can find for image textures for video games for characters. And if you look at the way they do the faces, they're all scrunched up and then they're spread out in the back because they have to match this same UV wrapping texture. I should have copied one of those and prepared it for you, but I forgot. So there are other things that you can try, though. So let's go back to UV mapping that will help this. So we're going to go back to UV editing. You'll notice if I take my, whoops, I got to edit mode. You have to be in edit mode, and you have to have select all. You have to have selected all the vertices to do this. I'm going to reset this and the UV unwrap, and then I'm going to try a sphere projection. And you'll notice how now, how it changes. You see how the pattern here changed from before? And now this should be a lot better. Well, it's a little better in its texture. Okay, it will actually look much more like wood. And you can then alter things too. So I can go in here, tab, okay, and I can take and stretch points. I can scroll in, I can grab them with the G key, and I can change the way they look and change the way that they're stretching the textures. So what I might want to do, and this can entail a lot of work, but I might want to shrink the whole thing down, scale, okay, and then what I could do is I could take, I could take these core pieces here, circle select with the C key. And I could grab like the core in the middle here. If I want this texture to look straight on the object, I'm just going to grab these, and I'm going to hit the G key. I'm going to move them up a little bit. Okay. Now I might want to use Alt and grab those, turn those two off here, and now I can grab that and move that so it's flat. Then Alt here and this one, and grab those and move those up. So you can see how I can start to move it, and as I do that, I'm making these vertices, I'm putting them in line with the wooden texture, and so what will happen is now the wood texture will be straight and go around the globe in a straight manner. The issue with this, though, is here's where Mr. Brewer was talking about it, a repeatable texture. Because what's going to end up happening is at that seam, if my texture doesn't match on the right edge of this unwrap versus the left edge, you will see where the two textures don't meet. Does that make sense? Or the two edges of the texture don't meet. Does that make sense? So basically, let's just go over what we've gone over, and then this will be the end of it. This is just an introduction. Okay, and then I'll start showing you how you work on certain objects. Like tomorrow I'll have maybe not tomorrow. Well, we'll see. I have a bed frame that I made up. I'm going to texture that in wood, show you how you would do a bed frame. And we'll just get more complicated as we go along. But here's the thing. Number one, in order to wrap a JPEG around an object, you have to unwrap it, which is essentially taking the vertices of your three-dimensional object and flattening them and making them two-dimensional. That is the trick to this whole thing. In order to do that, you have to select all vertices, you have to make the seams, and you have to unwrap it. Sometimes this gets so complicated that I get lost, and I have to start all over again. So one of the first things that I really recommend is when you're ready to start trying to texture, save a new version of your file and call it tower_UV unwrapped. So that if you, guys, stop. Let's act our age, please. So that if you mess it up royally, sometimes you can't even go back. Okay? Sometimes you reset the UV unwrap, you do all this sort of things, and nothing is working. Kind of like what was happening to me on the cube there. Okay? Sometimes you just got to go back to scratch. You do yourself a huge disservice if you didn't save a new file, yes? Yeah, I think so. So that's key number one. Do that. So, and then you select all, and then you say UV unwrap after you've done your seams. You may have to do your seams once or twice or 3 times to get a sense of how each object unwraps. Okay? It's difficult, and every object is different, so I can't tell you there's only one way to do it. But by doing it this way, you will have yourself a good texture to hopefully put onto your object. Does this make sense to everybody? There are some objects that are really, really, really big, like a tower, or what we just did here, not going to work that way. It wouldn't work the best that way. Okay? We want something that's going to be tileable, and we'll deal with that later. Okay? But does everybody understand at least the concept that's here? Yes, no, maybe so? We'll find out soon enough, I think. Okay, that's enough for now.